everybody. Good evening. We are 6 minutes late. We had technical problem in front of the keyboard, but it's sorted out, and we are here. So, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is our final live in this special April series, and tonight we will reflect on the Genesis, where Kardec brings together science, reason, and spirituality. Also, we will explore how Spiritism explains creation, miracles, and the evolution of humanity. Uh, and of course, not through superstition, but through natural laws and divine purpose. Okay, let's open our minds and hearts to the harmony between science and spirit. And for this, I do have three wonderful people here with me today. As usual, Dan is our special guest to reinforce the message. So, good evening, Dan. How are you, my friend?
Good evening. It is really great to have you here to, be with you guys one more time. That is amazing and fantastic in different ways. And I'm glad to be part of this session, especially talking about this very powerful and incredibly enlightening book that sometimes it's misunderstood, or should I say, not leveraged as much as it should have been.
Okay, good. Thank you. Ms. Gibbons, how are you, my dear?
Hello, good evening, Stevan, Don, and Charles, and everyone who's out there. This is a very special session that we're going to have about this book because it's so important. So many things are explained in this, in the book Genesis. So it would be nice for us to talk about it and clarify so many things, especially now that we are living moments of incredible scientific discovery about space and everything, with the James Webb Telescope bringing every single day something completely new that is challenging everything that we seem to have known previously about the universe. And also, I saw an article the other day about a group of scientists, physicists, that are actually saying that consciousness does not remain in the brain, but actually survives the death of the physical body. So, it's very challenging that everything is happening now in science, and this book is the base, an explanation of so many of the things. So we're very lucky to have it, and it'll be really nice to talk about it. So welcome everyone, and nice to see you all today. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Gibbons. Bonsoir, Charles.
Bonsoir, Stevan. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Indeed, that's the fifth and last book of the five that Allan Kardec wrote about the Spiritist body of knowledge. And it is indeed, I would say, being the last one, the one where he could express his thoughts in the most detailed and complete way. I always say it's a kind of the essence of the thoughts of Kardec is contained in this book. It's not the easiest one to read. It's maybe better to start from the Spirit's book and the others, and then but then come to this Genesis because it's really outstanding, and he had already 15 years experience in practicing and so on, and he published it or revised it shortly before returning to the spiritual world. So it's really the most advanced one, I would say.
Excellent. So, first, And of course, I think the first question we need to ask it is how does Spiritism reconcile scientific knowledge with spiritual truth? And because Dan is smiling to me, not to me, but smiling in front of me here, I have Dan smiling here. So Dan, yes, I give you the chance to answer to answer that question.
You are so kind, Stevan. Thank you so very much. That's why I love being here with you and our friends. I think that is one of the most fascinating and, to be honest with you, enticing characteristics of Spiritism. It is the fact that Spiritism, it's not just a spiritual revelation and it's not just scientific knowledge. It's both integrated together. And I think that is very rare. To be honest with you, I'm not familiar with any other philosophy or body of knowledge that takes this approach, because it really is about the spirit, about spiritual things, about spiritual life, the nature of spirits, where do we come from, where are we going, what's our future. And at the same time, it was created and is intended not to be a closed system that does not offer or take feedback from anywhere else. And it has been created with a very scientific, by a very scientific process. By that, I mean the very nature, the very beginning of Spiritism was scientific in the sense that Kardec was investigating a series of phenomena that were taking place in Paris in the 1850s, and used a certain scientific approach to that. That is, he went to different places, to different meetings, talked to different people, gathered different information to ascertain what was going on and to find out why is it that certain phenomena were taking place at the time. So from the beginning, the DNA of Spiritism is that of investigation, exploration, being open to change, and also dealing with the spiritual. So he reconciles spirituality and science in the sense that it is geared towards understanding the spiritual, but through a scientific approach of always getting different sources, different people from different places, and making sense of all this to such an extent that Kardec always said that when it comes to a point that science disproves something that Spiritism has built on, Spiritism should leave that part behind and follow science. So it's really about amassing information, gaining knowledge in a scientific way that provides hints and guidance and clarity for us on how to evolve spiritually. And we can go at length here. I don't want to take all the air, but we can go at length about how that happens. What is the Spiritist process? Because the Genesis, the book Genesis, is the result of that beautiful process, and there's so much that we could talk about that. But I don't want to take all the air right now. But I think that's what, Stevan, what really makes me so excited to study Spiritism is that it offers us an opportunity to have a rational reason approach to spirituality in a way that's not dogmatic, that is encompassing, that's open source, that is collaborative. And because of that, I think it's a really strong foundation for our own personal development, because it doesn't rely on the thinking of just one person, on the revelations of one prophet, right? It is about the joint efforts of many, many different people together. And you're on mute, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Thank you. Yeah, very, very good kickoff. Let me see who's smiling to me as well. Miss Gibbons, you're the next victim.
Can't smile today, Miss Gibbons or Charles. If you smile, Stevan's coming for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm always smiling, so I'm always there. Ask me anything you want. See if I can answer.
I'm just saying if you have any comments regarding what Dan said, do you want to compliment with something?
Well, I think one thing that he said that I feel the same way. I find that Spiritism is so incredible because it gives us so many answers to things that we were concerned before, we wanted to know about, and it explains everything in a very clear and concise way. The way, all the explanations come, and the teachings of the Spirit, and the way Allan Kardec put it all together for us in an easy, quite. It's an incredible, the questions and answers in such a easy way, but it's very complicated sometimes, but it's so easy for us to understand, and everything. So I find it very, very good. And, as I said at the beginning, I think we are living through many challenging times, many that at times are really challenging us to everything we know, and things that we had as real and eternal, now seems to be devalued. And so it's, especially for someone as old as me, I find it very strange sometimes that the world seems to have gone upside down, inside out. And also there are many difficulties, and we're living in a world of turmoil, of doesn't seem to have any peace anywhere. And even in the place where there is an actual war, there is war between people, everyone very aggressive or very isolating. And so I find that the Spiritism brings such a comfort. First of all, explains to us everything that's happening in a very objective way, without any anything from behind, because this, and you have to pay for this, and that is, all the ideas as well of punishment. It just explains the fact, explains that we are living through this turmoil because our planet is in the process of changing, is in a process of leaving behind everything that has been, to go into a higher level with people who are more higher in the way of their understanding, more spiritually aware, people who will fight for peace. So in a way, sometimes it's not a nice thing, but it seems that, as we look around, we see the dregs of humanity, because they are having their chance, they are having their opportunity to learn, to progress, to go forward with the world, with the planet. Because it's easy sometimes to become quite despondent and feel that, oh my God, it's terrible, everything is getting bad and worse. And it isn't, because there's still very many good people in this earth. We see acts of kindness everywhere, small things, and I think if there is one thing that Spiritism teaches us, is that we are not going to change the world. We're not going to make a huge difference, but we can make a very, very, very strong and concrete change where we are, where we live, with the people we know, with the people that we live with our friends, with our work colleagues, even in the street, and it's something that is very important for us, because I find that, it's so easy to fall into the news, and I don't watch the news anymore, too depressing. But there is hope, and everything we learn, it is good. Even the bad parts are part of the process of learning, creating more empathy. So I find that it's very important. And I find this book, Genesis, as well, in which, they explain about miracles and how it happens. There is no miracles, there is natural laws that are achieved. And once you know about them, once you know about the miracle of everything that seems miraculous, it's not, it's just within the natural laws that exist, that were created by God. So even the most interesting things. And when I was reading this, I remember something that I learned many years ago when I was in school. And I was learning about, the first Brazilian people who went into the jungle. They start opening up the country, the bandeirantes. And there is this very famous story about this man that he was named afterwards, Anhanguera. And he was a white man, and they went right into a lot of in the middle of the jungle, because there were forests everywhere in Brazil then. And he noticed, they met this tribe of Indians, and he noticed that they were all decorated all over the place with gold. They had gold hanging from their hair, from their ears. And he wanted to know, of course, being an European, he wanted to know where the gold came from. And they wouldn't want to tell them. They wanted to, they didn't want to say. And then he got a little bit of aguardente, and he put it in a bowl. And of course, aguardente, rum is clear as water. So he pretended that he got this water, and he said, "If you don't tell me where the gold is, I'm going to set fire to your rivers." And he lit a fire into the rum, the aguardente that he had. And of course, he caught fire because, some of those aguardientes like 50 degrees in alcohol, and the whole thing started burning. And that's when they called him Anhanguera, because he was the man who could set fire to the water. And of course, they told him where the gold was. And, it's the beginning of the end for them. But the reason why I'm going on in this story is that it was like a miracle for those Indians who never knew, they didn't know anything about this drink or anything. They thought it was the water catching fire. And for them, it was a miracle. And I think that that's exactly the point, that the spirits explain to us, that there isn't miracles once you know the laws. I mean, nowadays we know exactly what happened. But for those Indians at that time, like 500 years ago, they didn't know any better. And it was a miracle. And I think the more we learn things, the more those things stop being miracles or something outside of the normal, but just part of the natural laws that were given by God. So I think this is one of the important things in this book to talk about, actually.
Good. Wonderful. See? Two excellent point of views. And also I wanted to say good evening to Realia Rome. Thank you for being here with us. Let me see. Our dear friend Nicole. I don't know, this person is new here. Nicole. Nicole Assisi rings the bell then. I don't know. Hi, Nicole. Nice to.
I might know that person who's in the other side of the world right now, so I'm surprised that she might be there right now.
Yeah, good to have you here, my dear. Missing you. Also, good evening to Leonardo Bacarin Pedro. Our friend Lawrence Savio. Good to have you. Beth Maiden and Maíra Monteiro. So good. Good to have you all here. And please, if you do have any questions, please put it in the comment box, address it to us. We were more than happy to divert from our program here, because your questions is more important than anything. Okay, so just be clear here. If you have questions, please ask. Don't keep for yourself. So this may drive us to our second question, and let's provoke our French friend. He's not smiling, but I will provoke him to smile. So, see, I got it. So, Charles, what is the spiritist explanation for so-called miracles?
So it's a good one. Everything depends on the meaning of the word miracle, okay? because miracle has several meanings. The first meaning of miracle, the one that we find in the church, for instance, is that a miracle is a kind of a derogation to the natural laws decided by God in order to please someone or something, or to show that he is capable to do miracles and that he is God. Okay, so that is the first definition: exception or derogation to the natural laws. And the second meaning of miracle is some, for instance, you escaped from an accident by miracle. So it's a near miss, or you just don't know why, but you slowed down a little bit, and then you escaped, or from a plane crash or whatever. This is also called a miracle. So miracle can also mean some exceptional event. Okay, not being mandatorily a derogation of the natural laws. Okay, so this being said, the miracle in the first meaning, which means God making a derogation or an exception to the natural law, this, according to the Spiritist body of knowledge, and Kardec is explaining this very well, does not exist. And there is even a sentence, let me see if I find it quickly in English. Hopefully it is here. Yes, here I have it. So one sentence that Kardec wrote in this book is, God proves God's greatness and power by immutability and not by the suspension of the divine laws. So this means if God is perfect, the divine law or the natural laws are perfect. And if they are perfect, they don't need any exception or any derogation. And that is showing the greatness of God. Okay, so that is a position of the Spiritist body of knowledge concerning miracles. Now, about miracles, which is near miss, or how to say, I escaped to a plane crash by miracle or whatever. This again is explained by the natural laws. And in order to illustrate this, Kardec is analyzing where do we find more miracles. We find more miracles in the Gospels, for instance, or in the religious compilations, whatever the religion is. And it is known that Jesus made a lot of miracles. Okay, so Kardec is then analyzing all these miracles one by one, these so-called miracles, and he's analyzing them in order to check several things, whether this type of miracles that Jesus did has been repeated somewhere else in the history, and then also trying to give a natural explanation to these miracles, which then classifies them to exceptional events and not to derogation of God's laws. Okay, so this is a very interesting part, and Jesus, for the Spiritist body of knowledge, is not God. Jesus is extremely high evolved spirit, a pure spirit, so called, which one of the most evolved spirits who incarnated ever on earth. So he had a huge knowledge, much wider than ours. And he had also particularly knowledge on the fluids, on all these spiritual powers that science, which is based on the materialist paradigm up to now, is totally ignoring. And most of the miracle, so-called miracle done by Jesus, can be explained through these faculties that mankind is still knowing quite poorly. But again, the knowledge is progressing. There were a lot of observations done, for instance, in mesmerism and so on, the power of the fluid, the faculty of healing, because what Jesus healed a lot of people, the so-called miracles, people which were blind and recovered their view or sight, and or people who were how to say it, obsessed by spirits, and that Jesus has relieved also almost immediately. And this comes through his huge authority and his huge mastering of all this non-material, of all these fluids, which are not yet studied by science, and who can then give explanation to these miracles, and to a certain degree can be repeated on demand. So by people which are training, not all, not in the same way, maybe the same amplitude as Jesus did, but at least to a reduced, with a reduced amplitude, can be done also by other people until today. So that's also one of the big change that Kardec brought. There is a very good book who came out, written by two French authors. I don't know if it is translated into English. The title is God, the Science and the Evidences, the Proofs. And this book has two parts. The first part is showing science, showing the theories of the Big Bang, showing also the apparition of the life on the Earth, the probabilistic calculations showing that it can absolutely not be by chance, that there is an intelligence behind, and so on. So this is a very excellent study for giving evidences of a superior intelligence that exists somewhere, and which is what we call God. But the second part of the book is a little bit pity for us, because the authors are somehow inspired by religious beliefs. So they justify the existence of God by the existence of miracles. And that is exactly where the Spiritist body of knowledge is somehow in advance, showing that this type of miracles are not needed, at the opposite. Kardec is clearly saying, maybe God, who are we to judge whether God is capable to do some exceptions to his law or not? We cannot judge that. He may be able to do it, but if he's perfect, if his laws are perfect, could you a little bit try to imagine why should he do some exceptions to this law if they are perfect? They don't need exceptions. And this, yes, is showing both his existence and his greatness.
Yeah. Good. Good. Thank you, Charles. Then, Silvia, do you want to comment?
I think Charles said it very well. And I think that is the wonderful thing about the evolution of thought, right? The more we know, the more we can explain things and the more we can perceive things differently. Silvia mentioned the example, right, of burning water, which really was alcohol at the end of the day. We have also seen the same thing with eclipses, right, which were thought to be punishment by the gods by many cultures, eons ago, and now we know it's just a motion of planets. So it makes sense that as our knowledge evolves, we understand things differently. And I wonder, why is it so hard sometimes for us to do the same thing with spirituality or religion? Why is it not easier for us to just say, you know what, now we know a little bit more. We can reevaluate and re-signify a lot of the experiences that we have had before. But for some reason, one of the challenges that we sometimes face in our society in current religious thinking is that religion is stuck in its original form, right? Whoever starts a religion, there's the interpretation of that religion. Eventually, the first person passes away, dies. And then the followers start to interpret that, and they say, no. The only thing good is that original person, and we really can't deviate from that. And it becomes a really difficult challenge, because now there's people interpreting many generations away what that original person said, with no way of going back and really asking that person. And I think that Spiritism comes to change that by saying one person can start a wonderful idea, but we should all be able to add to it. And from a scientific perspective, that also includes those who are no longer in a physical body with us. So we could go back and ask the original composers of that idea through mediumship, which is a fantastic and very important characteristic of Spiritism. So it expands the way in which we look at these philosophies, and also expands the resources we have, because now we do not hold ourselves only to the physical world. We can also resort to our spiritual friends who can provide perspectives. But of course, just like everything else, the trick is to triangulate all that information and use what Kardec mentioned as the universal control of the spirits. That is to say, make sure that the same information shows up in many different places before we accept it. And that is a great way of validating that a message is indeed true. So I love that what Charles mentioned there, because it makes sense to me. It just makes sense that when we know more, we may change our perspective and the way we think about things, and we may change the way we live our lives. So I appreciate that progressiveness of Spiritism that allows me to look forward and understand new topics under a new light, and help that come to my life in ways that will be meaningful to me.
Perfect. Wonderful. Okay. Ms. Gibbons, how does the concept of universal fluid is related or connects with the spiritual phenomena?
I'm sorry, I missed right at the beginning of the question. Would you be able to repeat for me, please? Sorry. You disappeared for a bit.
How does the concept of universal fluid relate to spiritual phenomena?
Well, I think it relates to the spiritual phenomena and relates to everything that exists, really, isn't it? Because the universal fluid is from everything that exists came from. The world that we live, and everything is comes from this, which surrounds us all in the universe. It creates, as we learn more about that, we will discover new things that are really natural, things that seem natural. Say for instance, when you see things of ghosts, they go through the walls, don't they? They go through the walls because they live in a physical body that's a bit different from us. It's not as gross anymore. It's a subtle way. It's still a physical body, but it's in a different kind of matter, exists in a different way. And I think that's how it explains how this can be transformed into so many different things. For instance, our physical body, we are spirits, and then we have a spiritual body, or a perispirit, as Kardec quoted it, and we have a physical body. And they are, once we go into the spiritual world, we die, we leave this physical body behind, we still keep our spiritual body, our physical body goes, but it's just matter living in different ways, and that's how everything can be explained. And as we progress and learn, this is becoming more and more acceptable. I just find that sometimes, a lot of people think that for you to accept science, you must not believe in God. You have to have this division that, because of a lot of the problems that religion tried to impose on people throughout the centuries. It created this division, but you find that the greatest scientists, the greatest discoverers of things that we base our science on, they were all religious people. They believed in God. there wasn't a conflict for them. And they didn't think that, oh, I know I can't accept that God exists or is there because I'm a scientist. On the contrary, it was natural for them to discover it and everything. And it's just something very new that if you say you believe in God, people are funny about it. Then they think you cannot accept science. And we do. And I think that's one of the most important things, because in Spiritism, we not only we learn about science, but the spirits teach us we need to learn about science. We need to go and find things and learn things and do research, and accept God. There is no division on that. So the fluid, as we have in the questions of the Spirit book, he explains that this is a fluid, that there is a primary fluid and is a secondary fluid, and everything that is seen comes from the secondary fluid. So everything in the universe that we see is made from the universal fluid. Our physical bodies, spiritual bodies, the stars, literally everything is made of this element of the fluids, which probably now we begin to call it like dark energy or dark matter, whatever it is. And some scientists say it doesn't exist, some others do say they exist. And I think it is very challenging, and it's very amazing time as well for us to learn, because there's so many things that was theoretical even 50 years ago and was proved. So and everything is to do and is involved and is created by this universal fluid. I don't know if anybody else like to say some more about that. We are
And I would jump
surrounded
in
by
here.
it.
Yeah, and I think it's a great explanation that Silvia brings to us. But I also want to pick on Charles here a little bit, see if he can help us, because that word fluid is such an interesting choice, right? And it's a contextual choice for the times. So at the time when Kardec was asking the spirits, and also there's a linguistic thing here. That's why I would love for Charles to weigh in as our residence, our resident Frenchman here. Is, as the concept was coming up in this age of enlightenment that the codification took place, where they try to understand the world, Kardec was really looking for a word for the substance, for this element, for this energy, this cosmic, universal energy building block, and he used the word fluid. Nowadays, sometimes we think of the word fluid, at least here in the United States, as a more of a liquid, right? But what he really means by that is this substance that is adaptable, it's smooth, it's changeable, it's just an energy in different ways.
Charles,
Exactly. I think we have to
sorry,
look
you
in the
disappeared.
context. We have to look in the context in the midst of the 19th century, what was meant by fluid in science. Today we have the fluid mechanics, for instance, as you said, it's liquids or gases, and all the theories about it. But at that time, the fluid was more meant as an agent or as a support of something. For instance, they use the electricity was not known at that time. The electrons and the ions, which are moving, then carrying, permitting the electricity, the electrical current. But at time they spoke about the electrical fluid. They were thinking that electricity was also a property of a fluid. And that is exactly why Kardec used this expression of universal cosmic fluid as the primary agent for everything which is in the nature. And this universal cosmic fluid has also been called ether by the scientists. And until today, sometimes they speak about ether, because this primary or universal cosmic fluid is at the origin through its transformation or condensation or whatever other type of transformation, uh, performing all what is material and the property of the matter, including light, the photons, as we know today, are studied by science. But when the condensation or the concentration is to a lesser degree, it forms then the so-called spiritual matter, which is not physical matter, which is also sometimes called semi-material, which is then composing for instance, the spiritual body of the soul, which is around the soul, which is Kardec is calling the perispirit. So that is very well explained in the Genesis, because there is a full section, section 14, about fluids. Kardec had the project also, he was planning to write a sixth book about magnetism, about mesmerism, going more in details on this fluid. But he had not the time to write it and to finish it. But it is then in the Genesis that we have Kardec's more deeper views about the fluids and also the properties of this fluid. How I told about Jesus a couple of minutes ago, how Jesus was mastering how to use and to manipulate this fluid, going up to having physical healing or physical effects. And it is through the explanation given by these fluids that most of the miracles can be explained. Okay.
And sometimes,
sorry,
go ahead.
So I think these things about the fluid, where the way he explains in this first book, they were far ahead scientifically. They were far ahead of anything. And now we know that, as Charles was pointing out, we have a whole science, a whole field of physics dedicated to the fluid mechanics. And we are discovering more and more plasma and the condensation, evaporation, and all that sort of thing. For instance, I work for a company that they work with gas. When they found gas, they freeze it to liquefy the gas, so the gas becomes liquid. This is one of the applications of the discovery of the fluids that exist. You can transform air into liquid when you freeze it, and there is a whole field of it, plasma, and all the three elements. And there is the I think is the Einstein-Boss thing as well. There is a lot of them. So it's not just something simple that was there, but on the contrary, now that science is developing and discovering more and more, what it says in a very simple, because of course they couldn't explain that at the time, but I think we were already, like 200 years ahead or more, when the spirits, Kardec asked the question and the spirits answered that. I think we, the fluids and plasmas and everything is a very major field in physics now. So I think we are far ahead. The Spirit's book was far ahead of science at the time. What do you think, Charles?
Of course, because practically science did not yet study the elements of the new universe, of the nature, which are beyond the physical matter. Okay, that's a fact. And of course, on spiritual matter, science knows a lot of things. Particles, atoms, chemical, quantum mechanics, doing computers, and so on that we are using here. But all these are applications of physical matter. But in the universe, there is much more than just the physical matter. This universal cosmic fluid can exist condensed in a lesser degree, which is then the spiritual matter. And this spiritual matter is interacting with the physical matter. Okay, the best example, just look to me now. My spirit is acting through my spiritual body, which is then acting on my physical body. I raise my hand, it's my spirit giving a signal to my spiritual body, giving a signal to my brain, making my hand to rise. There is a continuous interaction in all the living beings between the spiritual matter and the physical matter. So there is a lot still that science must investigate. And Silvia, you mentioned, of course, some of the anomalies of the current paradigm. These stories about 90%, 95%, 97% of dark matter and dark energy. It's an obvious anomaly in the current paradigm of science. And this will probably only be solved once science will go to a post-materialist paradigm. Because staying into the materialist reduction with the blinds, this is where we are today. But in the universe, there is much more than just that. A lot of phenomena are coming, bringing also evidences of this NDEs, near-death experiences, mediumship, the miracle of Jesus, the use of the fluids, and so on. All this can only be explained in more detail by stepping out of these limitations of the materialist paradigm. So we are coming there, and it's part of the epistemology, evolution of science, that there is a crisis, and these anomalies are then leading to a new paradigm. And hopefully, we are coming now to this new paradigm where science will, last but not least, open the reflections and stopping moving away of this dogma, because it's a dogma, like the religion state dogma. Science has also a dogma, which is saying there is nothing out of the physical matter in the universe. No, it's just saying it is not enough. We should prove it. And the time when science will try to prove it, they will find out that there is much more than just physical matter.
Yeah.
This is fascinating, isn't it? Because
It is. It is.
you know, we read these things in the Spirit's book and in Genesis, and of course at the time the Spirits couldn't explain because they could not, go forward and explain things that people could not. But even that is one of the questions in the Spirit that Kardec asked the Spirits: is there vacuum in space? And their answer was no. There is no vacuum in space. There is a fluid that your eyes cannot perceive.
Yeah, I like that.
I don't know about that yet. So, I mean, even I was reading, because I read Scientific American and New Scientist all the time. I like that. They were saying, when they started doing the research on dark energy, they stopped because they could not explain things in a material way. It was not possible within the paradigm of materialism. Couldn't explain it. But they came to the conclusion, because we cannot perceive with our eyes, we cannot see it, but it's not dark, it's pure light. So at least they found that, and they said that we needed to find a completely different way to study this, because as science is now, we cannot prove anything. And I think, we studied about the human body, DNA, and now we know the human genome, and more science is going into a field that is theoretical, but beginning to prove. So I think, like Charles said, we are just beginning to discover things in a different paradigm. And the new people who are, and of course, I find fascinating that a lot of the discoveries about the universe, that the James Webb Telescope is bringing is completely challenging, even to the point that people already said there has never been a Big Bang. There are other universes, and you think, oh, the spiritual world, they will discover the spiritual world, which is a universe parallel to ours. So I find it fascinating, and that's what Spiritism is. You can accept science and all the explanations of science, and actually you are they give you some incentive actually to learn and to study this, and you still can accept God. And I find it very reassuring.
Yeah.
There is, Steven, if you may, if I just
Yeah.
may add, there is also another outstanding statement of Kardec in the Genesis. It's in the first section, which is called Character of the Spiritist Revelation. Okay. And there he's clearly writing that the Spiritist body of knowledge is not cast in concrete. It is progressive, and Spiritist body of knowledge is not fearing, at the opposite, it is encouraging the scientific research. And if science one day demonstrates that something in Spiritist body of knowledge is wrong or incomplete, the Spiritist body of knowledge will, of course, evolve and adapt to this new finding or to this complementation. So that's another outstanding, because it's anticipating the modern epistemology that did not exist at Kardec's time. And Kardec's, probably thanks to the inspiration of the spirits, anticipated that. And that's absolutely an extremely great statement that Kardec made here.
And I think that the Spirit Manual in 1955 writes in the introduction of a wonderful book called In Domains of Mediumship, or In the Realms of Mediumship, depends on the translation. And he says, talking about the investigation of science, that chemists, physicists, geometers, mathematicians, they are really priests of the spirit, because of their efforts in going deep into what matter is, into what science is. We keep finding more and more nuances about matters, particles, subparticles, and so forth. And we realize at the end of the day, it's not matter, it's energy. So they are really the priests of the invisible, because to steal the words of Charles Countryman, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who said, there's a French Jesuit priest who said that everything that rises must converge. And I think it's a beautiful sentence that really speaks to the way Spiritism brings things about. As science rises in understanding, as we rise in our understanding of spirituality, we realize that science will reach this spirituality and the reality of the spiritual world, much the same way spirituality is reaching a point where we can also leverage science to discover more things. And we're coming together in this beautiful communion, which I think is perfectly exemplified by Spiritism in its progressive nature, in its scientific driven aspect, but with an emphasis on the ethical. So it's really, really great. And I hope that folks can also take the time to read this wonderful book, The Genesis, that has been here. But if you are new to Spiritism, we suggest to first start with the Spirit's book. That might be interesting for you, unless you want to dive straight into the science. Then go straight to Genesis.
Yeah. I also want to address a question, not a question, but a sentence from Lawrence Savio. I think when we look for understanding, first we need to have comprehension. Very good, my friend. Also, Chris, my wife is here as well today. So, well, what? Today is the day.
Look at that.
About the Genesis, there is also the third part, which is about the predictions. That's also very important in this book.
Yeah.
And explaining how can people know about what will happen in the future? How can spirits know that? There is a theory for the foreknowledge. And there is also, Kardec is using that to bring the explanation about the predictions also that we can find in the Gospel, for instance. And the last chapter of the Genesis is also very important. The time has come, showing where we are on the earth today, where we come from, and where is the earth as a whole going to, going to a better world. But for this, it must go through a crisis to crisis and a lot of resistance to this change, which is exactly what we are living nowadays. So it's giving a very bright view about the future, optimistic view. Huh? And this is also very great because when we see all what's happening nowadays in the world, sometimes we have reasons to not to be so optimistic. But here we have a much deeper understanding that shows us no, don't worry, this is just a crisis, but we will definitively go to a better world here on Earth. It may take a little while still, but we will get there.
Yeah. Just one thing very briefly, when we're talking about science and religion, Dr. Marlene Nobri once, she wrote an article talking about, she had this conversation that she had with Chico Xavier once. And he said something very interesting that she put in this article. And he said that religion comes and opens the path, the footpath. Then science comes and paves the road, So it's such a nice way of putting it, because we are discovering it. And I think science will one day come back the same road, they will go in the same road. And it's very exciting. We're living through very exciting times, difficult but exciting at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so unfortunately, it's already over 10 o'clock. We need to wrap up. So I want you to say thank you, Dan, for your time. Thank you for everything. Thank you, Charles. Let me go to the announcements here. We don't have a topic defined for next week yet. We will work on it, but we will catch up soon and let everyone know what it is. Let me share my screen here. So it's coming. I will see Charles and everybody. I hope Silvia wanna be there. So I'll see you everybody in Finland in the first weekend of June, 7 and 8. So we will have the 8th European Spiritist Gathering. Okay. Also, it's coming in September, the International Spiritist Congress Joana de Angelis, in which Silvia, it is one of the speakers, one of the guests for this excellent seminar and work going to happen in the UK. Don't forget to subscribe to Spiritist Radar. Stay connected with the news of Spiritism in English. So please subscribe, and we will keep you informed about what's going on in the Spiritism world in English. We invite our young people to join the Spiritism Together every Thursday from 6:45 to 7:45 UK time. If you are interested, please contact send an email to contact at Solidarity Spiritist Society of org.uk, and they give you the access link. A Buzz released the new newsletter. Don't forget to read our Spiritist magazine. And this is all from me today. So, Charles, thank you so much for your time. Silvia, thank you so much for your time. Dan,
Thank you.
a huge thank you for you. I also say thank you to Lawrence, Gilson da Gama, Chris Bertozzo, Lou VM, Rialia, Nicole, Assisi, Cristina Araújo, Leonardo Pedro, César Agostinho, Beth Maiden, and Maíra Monteiro. So thank you, guys. I'll see you next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you all. Have a good week. Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.